welcome to Legally Speaking with me, Tarun Nangia. Today we have a very, very interesting topic. As we all know, Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman made a big announcement that at Gift City in the state of Gujarat, we are going to have an international arbitration center set up on the lines of SIAC, which is the Singapore International Arbitration Center. You would all notice that in the past 2 years, the government has played a lot of emphasis on the establishment of arbitration centers. And it is not unusual to hear a lot of people in the government talking that when India attracts billions of dollars in investment and there are disputes, the arbitration must be done locally, which is in India. It could be any center. It could be in Gujarat. It could be in Hyderabad, Bombay, or Delhi. But it can't be sent outside India. In fact, they went to the extent of speaking that for a group of countries in and around India, India should become the preferred destination for arbitration. And that is why when the government has an intent to do something, you can see these results. And the Gift City Arbitration Center is a fallout of this thinking. So today we're going to discuss this very good news that we got to hear from the government. I have a very eminent panel with me on the show today. May I introduce you to Senior Advocate Harish Jagtiani. As we all know, he runs a law firm by the name of Oasis Counsel and Advisory. Welcome, Mr. Jagtiani. This is your first appearance on Legally Speaking.
Thank you for having me.
And I have with me Justice Rajiv Sahai and Law. He's also a relatively new face on Legally Speaking. I think your second appearance on the show, Mr. Endlaw.
Yes,
and it's a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you.
I have with me Justice Iqbal Ahmed Ansari. You've been seeing him for now about 4 to 5 years. He's been kind enough to give time at short notice. As we all know, he has served as a Chief Justice of Patna High Court. And we'll be discussing this issue and giving his perspective today. Welcome, Justice Ansari, on the show.
Thank you.
I have with me Meghna Mishra. She's senior partner at Karanjawala and Company, looks after the dispute resolution practice. Welcome, Meghna.
Thank you.
I have with me Udit Gupta, managing partner of Udit Kishan and Associates, a law firm that looks into both arbitration and litigation. Welcome, Udit, on the show. Now to lay the ground of this issue and basically lay the bedrock of what is going to happen with such measures, may I request Mr. Harish Jagtiani to lay the ground and then we can start the discussion. Could you lay the ground in about 2 minutes and then we will take it to the other panelists for taking this forward?
It's my pleasure. Well, actually, it's always been my lament, and I look upon it as a tragedy that we haven't had an international arbitration center in India all these years. And the thunder is stolen by our neighbors, by Singapore International Arbitration Center. You know, an interesting fact that 23 to 25% of the disputes which are resolved in Singapore are where one of the parties is an Indian. Now, why should this go outside, considering the rich legal legacy that India has? That's one. It goes back so many thousands of years, and we're steeped in legal legacy. Apart from that, look at the linguistic skills that exist in India. So these are all tailor-made to be the hub, to be the most attractive, to be a magnet for dispute resolutions. Also, as Justice Endlaw, Justice Ansari will bear it out, that being a judge or opting for being a judge or being an arbitrator is probably a family trait. You know, you take a judgeship, it doesn't matter at what level, it's only because your ancestors or someone in your family were judges. So this really, for me, it baffles me as to why we didn't have an arbitration center earlier, because we've got everything going for us. Again, look at the size of this subcontinent. You know, you have what wonderful destinations. You have, take for instance, Goa now. Goa, according to me, would make an excellent center for arbitration. Its connectivity is superb internationally. And again, they have 3 or 4 very, very important law schools there. So you got paralegal support. So therefore, that becomes an extremely attractive destination for having an international arbitration center. And the importance of an international arbitration center, and I'll be very brief, is that what happens is that these centers they have their own regime. So you work to a certain procedure which is prescribed. Of course, once the seat is India, then the curial law will be the Indian Arbitration Act. So you have the procedure which is prescribed by the regime, which lends itself to certainty. And you have the Indian Arbitration Act now, today, which of course with the amendment, it has introduced many, many progressive methods, progressive provisions are provided for over there. So this combination with the certainty and a legacy that we have would make India an excellent arbitration center. Of course, there was a time, and both the justices will bear me out, that there was a time when people perceived the Indian courts as being a little trigger happy in admitting awards and admitting challenges to awards. But that, I think, has long since changed. The trend was being laid down by the Supreme Court, and especially the high courts in the metropolitan cities. Especially, I look upon Delhi as one of the most progressive high courts in laying down the law in the area of arbitration. So I think there is a revision of thinking, because the basic jurisprudence of arbitration is that the arbitrator has the right to be wrong, so long as it's not an egregious wrong, not a perverse decision, it can't be interfered with. So this is what we have going for us. And I think I must welcome this international arbitration centers which are being set up here, because it's the need of the hour. There's really no need to lose out to Hong Kong. Even Dubai, to a large extent, a lot of cases gravitate towards Dubai. And now I believe that Sri Lanka also is getting proactive. So I think we should get all these people.
Point very well taken. In fact, if I may hasten to add that now there are about a couple of hundred companies that are now operating out of Gift City in Gujarat.
Yes.
And even when contracts are entered into, the contracts can continue to be executed. And even then, if there are disputes, and ongoing arbitration goes on even as the contract is being executed. So there are many arbitrations that go on. This is a very quicker mode of dispute resolution. I'll go quickly to Meghna Mishra, Senior Partner, Karanjawala and Company, to share her experience and what she feels of this announcement.
I look at it as an extremely positive announcement that has been made. And I think over the years, from about 2014, I would say there have been amendments which have been coming, which have changed our perspective as practicing litigation counsel also. It is no longer a mechanical appeal that is filed against arbitration awards. But that said, I think, to appreciate why this is of paramount importance is, we need to look at in some detail what is gifts and, and what is the kind of economy of scale that we see there. Now, number of companies that have come, the incentives that the government has given. So all of that, I think, would have been incomplete but for a international arbitration center being set up there, which will also look into the quick disposal of the cases. And that said, we need to tap into our, perhaps the retired judges, etc., must be brought in to maybe set up a different regime for quick disposal even of the appeals. And that's something that I just wanted to share on this platform, so that that's something we can start thinking about.
Thanks for saying this. In the observations that the judges will make, I think they will cover this point. Udit Gupta from Udit Kishan and Associates Managing Partner, your intervention.
Hi, Tarun. Hi, all panelists. I would say that, GIFT is, the full form is Gujarat International Financial Tech City. Now, this has been set up by the Honorable Prime Minister when he was the CM of Gujarat. But the project was not very successful at that time. That will be for another day to discuss. This project has been set up on lines of what has been set up in DIFC, Hong Kong FinTech City, and those kind of things are there. But still the Indian companies were not, or the international companies were not willing to come in despite the government giving incentives. The reason was because they said that if we come to this country, the problem will be if there is an arbitration, anyone will go and file an anti-arbitration injunction and get a stay. And that's why the 2015 amendment was brought in, and then the 2019 amendment was brought in. And these amendments have been of great effect. Now, once an international arbitration center is set up in Gujarat, The advantage is the investors will be focusing on, investing in India because they know that once they invest, if there's a dispute, that can be resolved through this center. Now, the rules will be very important. The emergency award is something that is not incorporated in our Arbitration Act. So if the International Arbitration Center rules allow for arbitration, emergency arbitration, that emergency award is binding as per the judgment passed by Honorable Justice Nariman in Amazon versus Future Group, the recent judgment. So I think it will be a very, very good step. Currently, if you need an emergency award in India, there's no provision. So you'll go under Section 9 or Section 17. Both are time consuming, which will take at least about 30 days for anything to be done. So I think this is a very, very good step that has taken place. And Tapan Reji has been appointed the very, very senior and experienced bureaucrat to take care of this. So I think it's a very good step.
Point well taken. Now we'll go to Justice Endlaw and Justice Ansari for your comments. In fact, as we can see that both of them do arbitrations presently in the national capital. Now, if it's Gujarat, we'll also ask them, would they be keen to go and, because it's far away in that sense, would they be ready to fly down and do arbitrations there? And also their arbitration, I mean, in a sense, their observations on the government's move. Justice Endlaw and Justice Ansari after that, in that order. What are your observations on this step?
The announcement shows a good intention, but ultimately the proof will be in eating the pudding. So a lot depends upon how the rules of the arbitration center are framed, because if those rules do not take into consideration the ills which ail the arbitration in India, then just because it's an institutional arbitration center will not serve any purpose. Now, my experience in the Delhi High Court has shown another factor. As long as the arbitration center remains something which will fall within the definition of state in the meaning of Article 12, it is bound by something. So at this stage, it is very important to see that the principles which apply to a state do not apply to this arbitration center. I'll give you an example. When Delhi International Arbitration Center was set up, the rules initially provided that it's not as if every judge who's retired or every person who desires to be an arbitrator would be entitled to enroll. A committee was formed of very eminent jurists to select on the basis of track record whether the person should be admitted as an arbitrator affiliated to that institution. But that experiment did not work because there were allegations and it was felt that the court should not be discriminating. The arbitration center, of course, has to work within the statutory framework. But within the statutory framework also, there is a lot which can be achieved. Today, according to me, the biggest thing which ails arbitration in India is that the people conducting the arbitration and the people who are appearing as counsels in the arbitration, they are so steeped with the court procedure that they are unable to make a distinction. So timelines remain about the same. Of course, it's been much improved with the amendments now, but I see no reason. I have very little experience in the last 6 months, but I see no reason why it should go on for even 2 years. Because the whole purpose of arbitration is to, from day one, start resolving the dispute, and which, according to me, can be achieved in a shorter span. The only thing is that the counsels as well as the arbitrator should be willing to give time. So it's possible for an institution to lay down those frameworks, to take undertakings from the arbitrators who are appointed, that they would be able to devote that much time and ensure. And another very important last thing which I would like to mention is there should be a system of grading the arbitrators. So if the arbitrator has not abided by the timelines, or if has otherwise procedurally erred, then the grade should be reduced and ultimately the arbitrator should be eliminated from the institution. So that freedom needs to be vested, and so the need is to create a body which will have the freedom to do all that. Thank you.
So it's a very grading of arbitrators is a very good point that you shared with all of us. I think we would like to take that issue also forward someday. Now we have Justice Ansari on the panel, and I think now for 5 years plus he's been in a sense doing arbitrations. In fact, if you would remember, sir, many times when I call you, you were at the Niti Bagh, where I think the arbitrations go on in Delhi. So either you're going or coming from there, and many times your phone is not reachable, you're in arbitration. Many times it so happens. So you've been doing this for now years. So your observations where the country is headed, you've seen this now for 5-6 years.
It augurs well for all of us that ultimately India is going to have another international arbitration center. I tend to agree with Brother Justice and Law in the sense that apart from the infrastructure, which has to be of the standard, international standard, we have to ensure that as far as the lawyers and the judges merely having an arbitration center will not do. The arbitration center has to be of international standard. International standard means it has to have all the facilities available otherwise at international centers. And secondly, those who participate both as lawyers and also as a judge, as Justice Law says, they are steeped in the odd common litigation. That we have to come out. We have to ensure that arbitration is decided as an arbitration, definitely different from the regular court work. That will help, because unless and until there is expeditious disposal of arbitration proceeding, it will be very difficult for us to take the things forward.
Expeditious disposal.
Yes.
So that's a valid point, because whenever we discuss with promoters or CEOs, they always tell us that arbitration, we want speedy disposal. Loans have been taken and disputes ensure sometimes that money is stuck. So the quicker it is, the good it is for the company, as also the employee salaries have to be paid, banks have to be paid, EMIs, all of that. I mean, these topics do come up when you discuss. We will take a short break and then we'll move to a round of final comments on this show. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Just before the break, we had Justice Ansari sharing with us about the kind of infrastructure that the arbitration center should have, also the issue of speedy disposal. Of course, before that, Justice Endlaw also shared with us grading of arbitrators as a point. Now we will begin our round of closing comments. Quickly, if each of the panelists can summarize what they feel specifically, because this is a new center that is going to come up in Gujarat, what different can be done? Because you can have the best infrastructure, but if there are no cases, then it will not work and the government's aim will not be fulfilled. So what, 1, 2, 3, if you can give us 2-3 points each. Udit Gupta.
Yes, Tarun. I think that the points will be that, see, an Arbitration Council of India, that is under Part A of the Act, Section 43A to M. In that, 43D specifically states that the arbitrators and the arbitration institution also has to be graded. So what Justice Endlaw said is actually provided. But interesting thing is that the Arbitration Council of India has not been notified at present because there is no international arbitration center other than the Delhi and the Bombay one, but which is not being accepted internationally. So definitely, I think that once the center is there with the rules of international standards, this will work. Thank you.
Point well taken. Over to Mr. Haresh Jagtiani for his final comment.
Yeah, I think Justice Endlaw has made some extremely pertinent observations. The whole idea, how you attract litigants to the arbitration center is through instilling confidence in them. And in order to do that, which is really the key of the whole matter. And therefore, I think we really could think in terms of having a governing council, which consists of eminent people, personalities, Indians, including industrialists, etc., all those who are completely, who are so, who know all about arbitration, what its deliverables are. That's something very, very important to have a very eminent apex body, because that would then vouch for the integrity of the council as well as create confidence in the people. And one more thing, I think that every arbitration center must have a list of specialists who are empaneled with them. They need not necessarily be from the legal background, because for instance, if you have a works contract, etc., you need someone from that particular area who's familiar with the whole thing about infrastructure, etc. So you must have. I know that under LCIA, I had once an occasion to appear before them. The matter went on for a number of hearings before the arbitrator, but finally the parties decided to have a shy at settling the matter and getting into a mediation without prejudice to this if it didn't work out. After all that, another mediator was appointed, and that mediator had such specialized skills in that he finally put an end to the litigation. Then I asked the mediator, does he ever double up as an arbitrator? He says, no, it's strictly specialized. Arbitration is one thing itself. So this is, I think, the need of the hour. And I'm glad
Mr. Jagtiani, you brought up that point. Day before yesterday, I was discussing NHAI arbitrations with a bureaucrat, and he brought this point with me and shared with me. He told me that, okay, when the awards are decided one way or the other, they are largely correct. That's not the issue. The quantum of money to the paid is a dispute, because that is not factored in. Many times the calculation goes wrong. So many times the government doesn't agree to the award because the quantum of money to be paid out is not calculated properly, because the presiding arbitrator of the others are not experts in civil engineering. So many times they say that government in principle wants to pay but doesn't want to pay what is being awarded. That was something that he highlighted. I'm going to take it up in future, but because you brought this up, I shared with the panel. I'll go to Meghna Mishra for her final comment.
So I concur with what Mr. Jagtiani said about the expert panels being a very crucial and integral part. And in fact, I find that even in our ad hoc arbitrations now, the arbitrators are open to this. And I'm sure when we are going to frame these rules, this will be something that will be taken into account. The only worry is that we have a fantastic arbitration center, and then when the appeals start coming, and then they are clogged in that process. So that is something that I really feel we need to work at. Otherwise, because all this momentum that we have built in building, the city and all the infrastructure that we are creating with the center coming up, that will in the long run get defeated, because it needs to be much quicker than what it is, because our courts, whether we like it or not, are really overworked and overburdened, and it will not be possible and feasible and practically speaking for us to see appeals being disposed of at the speed which would be expected in our international arbitration center.
More so when one of our former Chief Justice of India said that he would never litigate. So I was very surprised when he made that statement. I won't name him, people know who he is, but he said, I will never litigate. So I was surprised that time. But anyway,
I think all of us would say that, Tarun.
So I'll go to Justice Endlaw for his closing comment.
See, we can't wait for the arbitration center to build its reputation. That will be like a young lawyer who waits for decades to build his reputation. Now, the arbitration center has to be marketed. The arbitration centers with whom we are competing or whose work we intend to take over, they all market themselves. I won't name, but we have all experienced their marketing. And that marketing is not like marketing any other product. So it has to be, somebody has to go out into the world and inform that what we have available and what are our rules and what are our standards. And once we have that, I have no doubt that we will be able to sail through and it will be a success.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that note, I hope even you contribute to the Gift City by, if not in the governing council or otherwise, which is a different thing, at least going and accepting arbitrations. Because Delhi by far has the best pool of arbitrators who are judges. So when they back some initiative that works, I'll go to Justice Ansari for the final word on today's show.
We have to get over the bottleneck. One of the reasons for success of arbitration in Singapore and other places is emergency arbitration, which we do not have except in the form of Section 9 or Section 17. But that takes quite a lot of time that we have to get rid of. Number one. Number two, as Meghna Mishra has said correctly, there has to be a separate regime for appeals from arbitration so that the appeals are disposed of quickly and at the least possible expenses. Thirdly, we have to go for marketing because an arbitration center does not really succeed or can be successful unless we have the necessary infrastructure, which we do have in places like Delhi, Bombay. The airports will have to be there, bringing flights from every corner. There has to be good hotels available. Then the vehicular arrangements have to be made. These are the things which the arbitration center, which has been set up, can advertise for itself. And these are the minimum that we should do to develop the center.
Okay. Thank you so much for all these interventions. I would like to thank my panel today. Justice Ansari, Justice Endlaw, Meghna Mishra, Senior Advocate Haresh Jagtiani, Udit Gupta from Udit Kishan and Associates. I mean, some really constructive suggestions on today's show. The Arbitration Center has not come up. The Finance Minister has announced it. This is only our first episode on that center. Of course, there will be many more. But I appreciate all of you taking out time and joining us for this good initiative. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, viewers, for supporting this. In a sense, arbitration involves the whole business community in India. We all want quicker dispute resolution. And as many judges also say, that arbitration can support the court system in a way nothing can in this country. We have a great pool of retired judges who are, not all, but many of them are giving time for this. And a lot of youngsters are picking up arbitration as their first practice, not something they do after 4 p.m. That is also good news. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.